Well, it's hard to figure out exactly which bit of our work to focus on for this, but I thought what might be useful is, in the last 6 months we've had a kind of accelerated process to try and build LifeTracks and also to engage with as many young people as possible in the process of doing that. And I thought it might be useful to do kind of an overview of how that went, how that related to what we used to do before, and then some of the sort of challenges and the benefits that have come out of that whole process. So, as you already saw, this is the site.org. Now, we've always had elements on the site.org that involved consulting with young people and involving members of kind of our community. Like 50,000 people are registered with the site.org, around that number anyway. And you know, about 500,000 people look at it every month. So within our community section, where most of the sort of engagements takes place, we've always had surveys which relate to external issues as well as internal issues. Sometimes asking people about what we should change on the site, what we should improve, what we shouldn't, as well as kind of daily polls about Inglorious Bastards, not conversation, not engagement there, but still some of the wider issues. And on our discussion boards, we've kind of had ongoing discussions about changes to the community section, attempts to kind of show people project documentation, get feedback on that. But we also run user panels, which are private kind of hidden areas which allow us to kind of consult with small online focus groups. Now, when it came to putting in a bid which related to career services, let me go back for a second. Yeah. When it came to putting in a bid to Vodafone, as it was at the time, but it still is. When it came to putting in a bid to Vodafone about kind of a work and study website, we decided to do kind of, you know, what we usually do, which is a user panel to ask people their issues around work and kind of how they've been supported before, how they've failed to be supported before. So look for kind of the gaps that existed and what we could kind of fill as we were doing it. And that led to, you know, lots of questions about it and lots of colour and lots of kind of, you know, stuff that would flesh out the final application. As you can see, the application was kind of bundled with lots and lots of points where we were able to use our community base to really give a sense of young people talking about the issues that were actually engaged. But that never felt like it never felt enough, and it never felt really engaging with young people. It always felt like, you know, they were quite grateful to be involved, and we were incredibly thankful for their involvement, and we thanked them individually. You know, they were thanked with rewards for actually getting involved in that, but it never really felt like they were central to the actual process. It felt like something that was very useful, and it kind of added to the voice of young people and what we were doing, but not enough. So when it came to doing life choices, which is what the project was called at that time, creating this new work and study website, we started off from a point about, I think this was about 6 months ago, of trying to put together how we really wanted to engage with young people and what level of involvement they would actually have. And that led to, you know, kind of trying to figure out the principles on the basis of it that would develop and kind of grow over time, which includes things like, you know, that they would have access to all the kind of project documentation that we would have access to. They would be, you know, they would see everything that we were looking at. They would see what debates and discussions actually taking place. A few things that haven't happened yet, you know, that they would actually be members of the governance group, that they would actually be involved in kind of the final decision making over time. Hopefully that will kind of happen. But the important thing was to kind of, for us to actually put a framework together for how we would actually do that, rather than just kind of assuming that showing them what we were doing or just asking for feedback was going to actually be enough to count as kind of real engagement. So then we went on to think about what levels of consultation do we want, what formal, informal, kind of putting together which teams were responsible, exactly who was going to ask what questions, that kind of thing. And then started looking around for a tool that would allow us to do that. Which is how we eventually ended up with Ning, which I'm sure people are familiar with, or some people are familiar with, as a way of kind of creating that stopgap between you building your own social network and using the social network like Facebook that didn't really provide the level of privacy and had issues around privacy for what we were trying to do. So Ning was picked as the best place to at least experiment with this and give it a try. That's led to like a couple of hundred people are now engaged and kind of taking part in kind of the discussions in about the 4 months, would you say about 3 months that kind of Ning's been up and running? It's about 4 months. Yes. And answering a large number of questions about the actual detail of the project we're working on. So for example, we're asking them everything from detail on the homepage designs to the original questions around what would be included in the homepage design, asking them to actually prioritise the work that we're doing, help us to prioritise it, and try to do it in the most honest way possible, because the reality is that we couldn't just run a project where, with the business decisions that we had to make, with the young factors that we had internally in the organisation, the aim was never that they were actually running the project, but that they were very involved as any important part kind of within the process. So, so we balance and are honest about what decisions they're being informed about, which decisions they can actually make a difference on, what decisions are entirely down to them, just to try and make sure that people aren't being told that they can get involved in something just for the sake of making them feel better, and then we go off and do something completely different. And of course there's more casual stuff as well, like a chat with people to kind of introduce themselves and kind of chat to each other and get free stuff from kind of LifeTracks as it sort of goes along. And of course in the end we end up with the LifeTracks website. This isn't by any means the end of the process, and it's kind of sort of continually developing. Right now we're just putting together the community functionality on LifeTracks, and we're already for the first time joyfully reaching that point where they completely disagree with us, which is fantastic. So we get to argue that we have to do what they want, and everyone else in the office just thinks they're being completely wrong. Which is kind of the stuff that, not that you want that, but it kind of makes it nicer to actually kind of have